Oh, hey, look at that. I didn't think I was going to be able to do another video, but I did. You're welcome. All right. We are going to jump into asks. I still have quite a few, so I'm still not sure I'm going to get through all of them, but we'll see what we can get done today. So much for Angela King saying that Daryl's first kiss will be this monumental thing. It was such a flop. It felt really forced. I want Daryl to have a happy ending, but at this point I feel like he's just going to keep running into fandom girls or random girls. I thought you said fandom girls. I was like, when has he done that? And he will never get the happy ending he deserves, and they will just torture him until they can't anymore. I don't remember in particular what you're talking about, Angela King saying his first kiss would be this monumental thing. I'm not doubting you. I don't particularly remember that. You'll have to see if you can find that reference for me and send it to me. But I didn't mind the kiss. I didn't feel like it was like super passionate and amazing, but for what it was, and I think it's important that they went out of their way to explain it, like Norman saying it was just an experiment and all that. So I understand your frustration. I really do, but I am not that frustrated by it, and I think that they are heading toward his happy ending, and I still think his happy ending is going to be Beth. So I still am really hoping that we get some sort of big hint of her other than the symbolism. I don't know that we will before the end of the season, but one can hope. So I understand, but hang in there. It'll get better, I promise. All right. I'm listening to today's episode while cooking dinner, so thank you for giving my brain something to chew on while I'm doing that. You're welcome. Had a thought about you bringing up Daryl rejecting fatherhood with Sophia in season 2, and you may mention this later as I haven't finished yet, but you can heavily contrast that with him having an almost opposite reaction to Judith when she's born and almost immediately needs to be rescued, fed. He's not ready to be a father, yet still fair, but he's very on board with being a pseudo uncle from the get-go, plus all the visuals of he plus Beth being Judith caretakers over the rest of the prison time. Then along comes Lydia much later, who he relatively quickly bonds to, plus has a lot in common with. But Lydia's older and is a community adult fairly quickly by the end of the flagship series, so he is fatherly to her as a step along the way of his journey. And then we get Laurent now, who I gather Daryl was more resistant to originally than he was with Lydia, but he's also following in, for gleaned spoilers, finally making a conscious decision to take on this kid specifically right now. So to paraphrase the song, they have Daryl freaking Dixon sing on screen. You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need indeed. I'm not sure I've got a cohesive conclusion to all this, but you do have me pondering things here. Yeah, no, I really love all of your ponderings, and I don't see anything in there that I disagree with. I mean, I think that a big part of the reason he rejected fatherhood with Sophia, like I was saying in that video, has a lot to do with the fact that she died and he couldn't save her, and it was his grief over that. So I don't know that he necessarily would have rejected Sophia that way if they had found her and she was alive and had come back to Carol. I think he would have been buddies with Sophia, But I think it had a lot to do with his grief over not being able to find her and save her, which, I mean, everybody was super messed up when Sophia came out of the barn. In fact, funny story, I've told this before, but I don't know that I've put it in a video. When I started watching TWD, well, it was after I started watching it, but I became very, very fanatical about it after season 4, right? And I had several people in my family who hadn't watched it, and so I would be like, hey, let's watch it together, and it was just an excuse for me to rewatch it again, right? And whenever anybody that I was watching with, and I probably did this with like 4 or 5 different members of my family, when we got to the scene, or to the episode in the scene where Sophia came out of the barn, I mean, obviously I know what's going to happen, so I would like not even watch the show at that point. I would watch the face of the person who's watching it, who hasn't seen it yet. And it was so funny, but also it was always the same when she comes walking out of the barn, because if you remember, it was such a great moment, the way that they orchestrated it. You see it from like Sophia Walker's point of view, and you're going, okay, somebody else is in the barn that's looking out, that's going to come out. And then you kind of see her feet and her shoes, and you're still not getting who it is. It's not until it pans all the way up and you see her face, and even then it takes like 2 seconds, and then you're like, oh, and you realize that it's her. And every single person that I showed it to did the same thing, and they would have that same reaction, because it's just so heartbreaking that it's actually her, right? So they just orchestrated the tragedy of that moment so well. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that everybody in the group, in Rick's group, had PTSD from that. I guarantee it. Obviously Carol, because she was Sophia's mother, but Daryl did too. And so I think that him rejecting the idea that she could have ever been his in any way had a lot to do with the grief he was feeling over what happened. And so did the fact that he was yelling at Carol. So we didn't see that as much later with Judith and RJ, and then of course Lydia and even Henry, because it just wasn't the same situation, right? He wasn't trying to save them. They didn't die right in front of him. But that has happened with Carol a few times where people have died in front of her. And so it kind of puts that into perspective, a little bit. I think that a lot of the reason that he immediately wanted baby Judith to live is because he didn't want that to happen again. He'd already seen Carol lose her daughter, and he didn't want that to happen to Rick. So he immediately went, okay, I got it. We'll figure out something to keep her alive. But I love, love, love the fact that it was very much him and Beth that seemed to be taking care of the baby. I mean, everybody did. Everybody was gathered around. Everybody was invested about the baby living, for sure, because it was a certain morale in the group. And especially because they lost Lori, they wanted to make sure that the baby lived, of course. But it's Daryl who gets the formula and then feeds her, and Beth is standing right next to him, and she's like looking down at the baby with so much worry. And I just love that it's the two of them that seem to be like the most invested and the most action oriented about it. And I think that is purposeful, and that will play a part in things, when she returns, because of all the child and baby symbolism around her. So yeah, I think that's part of the reason. And I do think, in a lot of ways, this is going to sound kind of funny, but he was very fatherly to Lydia, but in a lot of ways he was very big brothery, because you're right that she wasn't a little kid to him when he found her, and they bonded over the fact that they were both abused. They had abusive parents. So I almost felt like you could almost call that more of a brother-sister bond, like a really protective older brother. But at the same time, very protective older brothers also tend to parent their siblings and father their siblings. So it's a little bit fluid there. But yeah, I totally agree. I think, personally, I thought that the Daryl Laurent, when they met, I thought it was just hilarious and charming. And so I guess I thought that his resistance to Laurent was kind of funny. But Laurent was not having any of that. He was going to talk to Daryl and get to know him and just sort of claw his way into Daryl's affections. But yeah, I do completely agree with what you're saying about him making a conscious decision about it. And I think that's a big part of his arc, is the father arc. And that goes back to, things I've said in recent days about why they dressed him like Herschel, and the song he's going to sing with Laurent about getting what you need, not necessarily what you want. All of that plays into it. So yeah, that's a really lovely observation. Yeah. So I don't have a whole lot more to say other than that either, but I really enjoyed your thoughts, and I agree. So thank you. Let's see. Consumed Rewatch by Boofy777. Thank you for posting your analysis of the Daryl Dixon Season 2 episodes. I just got back from a trip and hope to watch them next week. I haven't done any real rewatches of TWD in maybe 2 to 3 years, but I got a bug up my butt last week and watched Consumed. Wow. May I first just say it blows me away to go back to those earlier seasons. Everything was so on point. The songs selected, Bear McCreary's musical score, the green screen, and maybe the magic van now, in hindsight, needed some work, but still a 9.9 episode out of 10. I agree. Back when it aired, a lot of Bethelers didn't like Consumed because it was so focused on Daryl and Carol, but it's always been one of my favorite episodes. It's got that real melancholy feel to it, and I'm kind of a sucker for melancholy, especially in dystopian setting. So I kind of love Consumed. I think it's really beautiful and really sad. But anyway, back to your ask. Even the comedic banter between Daryl and Carol over a piece of artwork was so really Daryl and Carol. It was. I agree. It was. But my point is, Daryl, during this entire episode looking for Beth, he was the best version of himself. I think the best version we've seen of him the entire show. Even Carol points out, "You're a boy, now you're a man." He truly is. Courageous, compassionate, tough, masculine, thoughtful, confident, and a true leader. I can't ever recall seeing Daryl like this in any other episode, and he's great. The Daryl we want to see. Not bereaved, childish Daryl later in the season, refusing to take a shower. Not S6 angry Daryl, not S7 imprisoned and tortured Daryl. Not Daryl just getting by and hiding from the world with his dog. He was only like this when Beth was an active presence in his life, and it's been years now. That has to mean something. That's really lovely. Really, really a beautiful thing to say. I'm going to put edit I did on screen from Consumed. that's just about him searching for Beth. But yeah, I think the easiest way to approach this is that it just goes back to what I always say, that he had to get to a certain point in order to be, quote unquote, worthy of the relationship with her. And it's a symbolic kind of worthy. But yeah, I think that this is a really illustrative way to show where he needs to be. Think about it like this. We did see him being pretty healthy and pretty socialized, if you will, in the beginning of season 4. He had become something of a leader. They had Patrick thanking him for bringing back the deer, and Carol kind of teases him a little bit and says, if you're going to be helping people and feeding people, you got to get used to the love. So he was actually in a really healthy place at that point. The only problem would have been that he was not in a relationship, right? He hadn't found a significant other. When the prison fell, he kind of went backward. He kind of retrogressed, and he, went into this robotic frame of mind that he has. And Beth was like not having any of that. She was going to pull him out of that and make him be normal again, But I mean, that makes it sound like she was being dictator-like or something. She wanted to help him heal. So it really was a compassionate thing on her part. And it worked. I mean, she did help him come out of that. And then we saw him kind of being like he was again at the beginning of season 4. But in this case, he was specifically looking at her, which we, all enjoyed and appreciated. Then, after he lost her in season 5, we saw him really retrogress and go downhill in all of the ways that you mentioned here. He was sad, he was bereaved, he was angry, he was murderous for a while in season 8 during All Out War. Then he was being antisocial, living in the woods, and you're right, like he hasn't ever gone back to that. So, yeah, I really, really love that. But see, I am also thinking that, per the whole, you don't always get what you want, sometimes you get what you need song, meeting Isabel and Laurent, this is part of it, right? Because it's going to help him get back to that person he was. He still won't have his soulmate yet, or at least not at the end of the season, I'm assuming. But I think it will get him back to the person he was, and he needed that. He needed, kind of a pseudo family for a while in order to get him out of the mindset that he's been in for a long time. And once he comes out of that, I mean, symbolically and energetically that will lead to Beth, but I also wonder if even in the plot, the fact that he changed so much when he was with Isabel and Laurent, that's going to affect what he does moving forward and how he reacts to things. And so that is like directly, even in the plot, going to lead him to Beth in some way, or at least I hope it will, because that would just be a really lovely way to kind of make it feel like fate, like it was inevitable and this is just something he had to go through. So yeah, thank you so much for sending that in. I really enjoyed reading your thoughts there. Let's see, what else have we got? These anti-TDers / Beth / Bethylers need to get Norman and Melissa's words right in their skull. Carol isn't going to happen, and it never will be like ever. It's Beth, and it's always been her since season 4B of the flagship show. Beth is love, Beth is life. I agree. I don't have anything really to add to that. I totally agree. And yeah. It's, you guys, the symbolism has never changed. So there were times that I wondered if something would happen and be like, oh, if this goes that way, we may be in trouble as TD, because that would suggest Beth is not coming back. But if it goes this way, we're okay. And it always went the way that we were okay. And the same symbolism that we are identifying in season 4 and season 5 is still in play. Okay, it's still around. So it's never changed. And that, to me, just shows that the love interest that they originally planned for Daryl has not changed either. Okay, so we've got some, I think you guys have been in the tags reading the Anti's posts, and now you're sending me these. I don't give a flying F what the haters say about you guys. I am and always will be a Beth and TD stan forever. That's just a way of life. It is a way of life. We've been doing this for a long time, and I agree. It is a way of life. Aren't you excited that when the Missing 17 Days footage finally gets aired, that's way long overdue, we'd get to see the flagship Season 5A cast, excluding Bob, in their iconic and awesome looks or outfits they've worn in that season. It'll also be nice to see Baby Judith like old times. Yeah, I agree. It's going to be surreal to see Glenn on screen again. And Abraham too, but Glenn is the one that really blows my mind for some reason. So yeah, it's going to be, even though it took a really long time, and obviously I would have wished for it to only be a season or two, or heaven forbid, even, half a season later or something. At the same time, it was such a genius move to film it all back then and make us wait for it, because it's going to be 100% like real and raw, because they really did film that back during season 5. So yeah, I think that's going to be awesome. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. What are your thoughts on Walking Dead Destinies, especially Beth? I'm so disappointed and surprised that they completely left out half of the Atlanta group, like Amy and Andrea, Jackie, Morales, etc. Not only that, they left out Sasha and Tyrese, Martinez, Milton, Bob, Lizzie and Mika and Karen. This game is definitely made on a very low budget, but that's debatable since the game developers recruited the original actors and their net worth is like thousands, if not millions. I can't speak too much to the industry of the game because I'm not a gamer and I don't really follow it. So I think what you're trying to say here is that it's surprising that they put Beth in it when they didn't put most of these other characters. That I probably am thinking the same thing that you're thinking when you say that, and that is just that it's significant that they went with Beth. They might add more characters later on. I don't know if that's something they would do, but this came out, as I understand, it was more during... I want to say it was like a year ago. It was like during the first season of Daryl Dixon or thereabouts. I don't remember exactly when it was that I first started hearing about this. But the point is, even if she doesn't arrive until season 3, they put this game out with her in it at the beginning of the spinoff, which is the vehicle through which she will arrive, right? So I think it's very significant that they put Beth in it and when they overlooked other characters. But this is also something that's been happening since Coda, right? They have more figurines of her. They have more merchandise with Beth at the center. They have more articles about her and callbacks to her and photo shoots of her and all these things. And I don't mean her as compared to other characters that are still on the show. So I'm not saying that there's more of her than Daryl or Rick or Michonne, but there's more of her than any other deceased character on the show. They don't do that with Tyrese and T-Dog and Andrea and Amy, and you know what I mean? They only do it with Beth. And it's been that way since season 5. We always make note of it, and of course, then the antis and the haters say, well, you've been saying that for years and she's never returned, and okay, that's true, but at the same time, that doesn't explain why they do all this stuff with her and with nobody else. And I think the reason is just always to keep her front and center, because she is going to be part of the show again at some point. And so they're just trying to remind us of her so we don't forget her. And it's their way of saying, wait, hold on, she's coming, wait. Not yet, but she's coming, you know what I mean? And this game is no different. It started and they put her in it and not anyone else. And I think there's a reason for that. Even if there's not any like massive smoking gun in the game and there's not any massive clues that we can take from it, okay, but just the fact that they put her in it. They're trying to remind the audience of her and bring her front and center. And it's no coincidence that not only do we have this game going on during the Daryl Dixon spinoff, but this is also this season where they very much publicly shut down the idea of Daryl and Carol as a romantic item, which they've definitely given us hints of that before and told us in various ways. But this is the first time they've come out very directly and said, no, this is not happening. Okay, they haven't done that before. And also, this is the season where Norman confirmed that Daryl was thinking of Beth romantically. Okay, none of that is a coincidence. It is all leading to something, and they are priming the audience for it. So that's kind of the extent of my thoughts on this, unless there is a particular part of the story or dialogue or something that you want me to look at, because like I said, I'm not a gamer, so I don't play, and I kind of rely on what you guys tell me about these games. So if you have anything else that you want me to specifically address, like I said, I really couldn't speak to the budget of the game. In terms of getting the actors, though, I kind of feel like that's neither here nor there, because I think these games are made, even if they're under a different company, a different umbrella or LLC, I think they're kind of made in conjunction with the show. So I don't think it would necessarily, even though Norman gets paid a lot, I don't think that would necessarily be a deterrent to having him voice the character. I think they would just put that into his contract. Oh, by the way, if there's any games or cartoons or anything, you're required to voice the character as part of your work for this paycheck, and then he would just do it. You know what I mean? So I don't think that paying the actors to voice the characters on an official what would you call that? Like a game that is being officially backed by TWD Business as an entity, I don't think that would be prohibitive for them, because it's all just kind of built into the same contract. At least that would, again, I don't know that for sure. That's my guess based on what I do know of the industry. I just don't see that as being a reason that they, and I mean, I guess we could even take this back to saying that we're pretty sure that Emily still has a contract with AMC. This is something we've talked about a lot because she hasn't taken other roles. So I suppose you could say that she might be expensive to bring in as a voice actor if they were just randomly doing this. But if they have a contract with her, then that makes it a lot easier. And we do think that she still has a contract with them. Anyway, so I don't think I can give really authoritative thoughts on that, but those are my very conjecture-y, rambling thoughts about that. So I hope that answers your question. All right, guys, we are going to call it there, and the next episode is going to drop very soon. I'm very excited about it, and I will see you on the other side of that with more analysis. Bye. Have fun watching the episode.